Now let us solve some numericals on steady flow energy equation. The problem is here: steam with negligible velocity enters a nozzle and flows frictionless. If the drop in specific enthalpy is 300 kJ per kg, then determine the velocity at which it leaves the nozzle. Let us collect the data. From the given problem, V1 is equal to 0 because in the problem it is mentioned that steam with negligible velocity enters the nozzle. Okay, that's why initial velocity is negligible, so we can consider it as 0. So V1 equal to 0. Then H1 minus H2, which is a drop in enthalpy, specific enthalpy, 300 joule per kg, 300 into 10 to the power 3 joule per kg. Then we need to find out exit velocity of the nozzle. Then for nozzle steady flow energy equation, already we derived this equation. Exit velocity V2 equal to under root of 2 into H1 minus H2. So H1 and H2 value both drop in enthalpy we know here. So if you substitute, you will get exit velocity as 774.59 meter per second. So this is the exit velocity of a given nozzle. The next problem: air enters a frictionless adiabatic nozzle with a velocity of 30 meter per second and at a pressure of 5 bar 18 degrees Celsius and leaves at a pressure of 1 bar. Determine the velocity at nozzle exit. Here also we need to find out velocity at nozzle exit. So from the given problem we can collect the data. Inlet velocity is 30 meter per second and inlet pressure is 5 bar. So if you convert 5 bar into Pascal, multiply it by 10 to the power 5. Then P2 is 1 bar 10 to the power 5 Pascal. Then we need to find out V2 exit velocity of a nozzle. Temperature at inlet 18 degrees Celsius is given. Okay. Then for nozzle we know that heat transfer from system to surrounding or surrounding to system is 0 and there is no work transfer. Then from steady flow energy equation we can derive this equation: V2 equal to under root 2 into H1 minus H2 plus V1 square, because here we cannot neglect the inlet velocity because he has given. Okay, that's why we need to consider the inlet velocity here. So now T2 we need to find out. Okay, how to find out T2 is using this equation. Okay, T2 by T1 is equal to P2 by P1 to the power gamma minus 1 by gamma. So we can easily find out T2 here. So once you find out T2, we can easily find out exit velocity V2 here. 2 into Cp T1 minus T2 plus V1 square. Okay, so this you need to remember it because it is adiabatic process. In adiabatic process, the relation between temperature and pressure is this formula you need to remember. So this is the formula which establishes the relation between temperature and pressure in adiabatic process. Then next problem: air at 5 bar 190 degrees Celsius enters a nozzle and leaves at 1 bar. The flow through the nozzle is isentropic. Neglect the initial velocity and change in potential energy and find the velocity of air at nozzle exit. Here V1 is 0 because he mentioned it is neglect the initial velocity. V1 is 0, initial pressure is 5 bar, final pressure or exit pressure is 1 bar. So exit velocity we need to find out. So temperature at inlet is 190 degrees Celsius, which means 463 Kelvin. So as it is a nozzle, so adiabatic process, no heat transfer and no work transfer. Neglect the potential energy and V1 is 0, initial velocity. So you will get this equation. So now we need to find out T2. We know that the relation between temperature and pressure in adiabatic process is this relation. Using this relation we need to find out T2, exit temperature, which is 292.3 Kelvin. So V2 is 585.70 meter per second. Next problem: an compressor takes in air at 1 atmosphere pressure and 20 degrees Celsius and discharges into a line having an inside diameter of 1 centimeter. The average air velocity in the line at a point close to the diameter is 7 meter per second and the discharge pressure is 3.5 atmospheric pressure. Assume that compression occurs adiabatically. Calculate the work input to the compressor. Assume that inlet air velocity is very less. So let us collect the data. Inlet pressure is 1 atmospheric pressure, which is 101,325 Pascal. Inlet temperature 20 degrees Celsius, which is 293 Kelvin. Rate of heat transfer is 0. Then V1 initial velocity is 0. Then outlet data. Diameter D2 is 1 centimeter because this exit is connected to the pipe which is having the diameter 1 centimeter. So 0.01 meter. Exit velocity 7 meter per second. Exit pressure 3.5 atmospheric pressure. 3.5 atmospheric pressure means 3.5 into 101,325 Pascal. If you multiply this 101,325, you will get this Pascal. Then we need to find out what is the work input to the compressor, because compressor is power absorbing machine. We need to supply work in order to compress the air. So we have steady flow energy equation. Already this equation we have derived it. So considering this equation, here dq by t is 0 because there is no heat transfer. Initial velocity is 0. By neglecting potential energy term, we will get this equation. Okay. If you simplify, then finally we will get this equation. Here we need to find out mass flow rate and temperature at the exit. If you can calculate mass flow rate and temperature at the exit, we can easily find out work rate. So m dot is, we know that from the continuity equation, a1 v1 by small v1, which is equal to a2 v2 by small v2. This v1 is velocity. Capital V is velocity, small v is specific volume. So m dot a2 v2 by small v2. Now this v2 is equal to 0. Okay. Then v2 equal to 0, we have p2 v2 is equal to rt2. v2 is equal to rt1 by p2. Then t2 is equal to t2. Using the relation we can easily calculate. We know this relation between temperature and pressure in adiabatic process. Then T2 is 419.09 Kelvin. This is not V2 is 0, V1 is 0, okay? Not V2. V2 we need to find out. So this we know that this is 287 joule per kg Kelvin. This constant, we know this value. Then V2 exit velocity is 0.339 meter cube per kg. This is for ideal gas. 287 joule per kg Kelvin is ideal gas constant. You need to remember this. So using this ideal gas equation, P2 V2 is equal to R2. This R is gas constant for air. So now mass flow rate m dot is A2 into V2 by small v2. Okay. This is A is nothing but area of cross section of the pipe. Small v2 is specific volume 0.339 we calculated. So now if you substitute all the data, you will get the mass flow rate m dash 1.622 into 10 to the power minus 3 kg per second. So finally if you substitute mass flow rate value and temperature values and final exit value, exit velocity value, you will get the work rate input to the compressor, which is 0.250 kilowatt. This is the work input to the compressor. Now last problem on steady flow energy equation. A gas turbine receives air at 5 bar and 210 degrees Celsius with negligible velocity. The air leaves the turbine at 1.4 bar with a velocity of 80 meter per second. Assuming that there is no heat transfer to the turbine wall, that the process is frictionless and change in potential energy is negligible, calculate the power developed by the turbine for a mass flow rate of 5 kg per second. Okay. Now inlet data. Pressure at inlet is 5 bar, temperature at inlet is 210 degrees Celsius, inlet velocity is 0 and rate of heat transfer is 0 and mass flow rate is 5 kg per second and exit data. Pressure at exit is 1.04 bar, velocity at exit is 80 meter per second, and we need to find out work done by the turbine, because turbine is power developing machine. Here we will get the work from the turbine. Then consider steady flow energy equation, m dot h1 which is equal to m dot into h2 plus v2 square by 2 plus work rate dw by dt, change in work per unit time. So here what is T2 we need to find out. So using this relation we can calculate the exit temperature using this relation. This relation is between temperature and pressure for adiabatic process. You need to remember this equation. This equation I have used for all the problems. Please remember this. So using this equation I can calculate exit temperature, which is 308.39 Kelvin. And finally, if you substitute T2 and T1 values and V2 values he has given, you will get the work done by the turbine, which is 861 kilowatt. Second law of thermodynamics, qualitative difference between heat and work. So to understand about second law of thermodynamics, we need to learn something about what is the qualitative difference between heat and work. The first law of thermodynamics, which we have been discussing so far, states that a certain energy balance will hold when a system undergoes a change of state or a thermodynamic process, but it does not give any information on whether the change of state or process is at all possible or feasible or not. So to simplify it, the first law of thermodynamics talks about energy balance. Okay, if the process does occur and it says that the energy will be balanced at one end and another end, but it doesn't give any information about whether the process is possible or not. That itself is the drawback of first law of thermodynamics. All that law can state is that if this process did occur, the energy gained by one end would be exactly equal to that lost by the other end. That is exactly what the first law of thermodynamics says. It is the second law of thermodynamics which provides the criteria as to the probability of various processes, which means that first law will not talk about whether the process is possible or not. That means that it is a direction limit. It puts directional limit on the first law of thermodynamics. It doesn't talk about direction of the process, whether the process is possible or not. But if the process did occur, then energy lost by one end is equal to energy gained by another end. That is completely agree. But the process itself is possible or not, that cannot be explained by first law of thermodynamics. It is the second law which will explain whether the process is possible or not. Joule's experiment demonstrated that energy, when supplied to a system in the form of work, the complete conversion of heat into heat is possible. But the complete conversion of heat into work is not possible in a cycle. I repeat, Joule's experiment demonstrated that when energy is supplied to a system in the form of work, then the complete conversion of work into heat is possible. But the complete conversion of heat into work is not possible in a cycle. So heat and work are not completely interchangeable form of energy. You can see in the diagram here, okay, here, when work is converted into heat, we always have this. When work is converted into heat, then work will be equal to heat. We can convert all the work into heat. But in second case, we can observe when the heat is converted into work in a complete closed cycle, we will have this, because whatever the heat we will supply, no, all the heat cannot be converted into work here. But all the work can be converted into heat. But all the heat which we can supply to the system can never be converted into work. So So this is the qualitative difference between heat and work. Okay. So this says that heat and work both are not completely interchangeable forms of energy. So work is considered to be high grade energy compared to then thermal energy reservoir. In short, we will call it as TER, thermal energy reservoir. Thermal energy reservoir is a large body of infinite heat capacity which is capable of rejecting or absorbing unlimited quantity of heat without suffering any changes in its thermodynamic coordinates. There are two types of TER, source and sink. Source. It is an energy reservoir which supplies heat and it is always at higher temperature. You can observe here. Source is an energy reservoir which supplies heat and it is always at higher temperature. So that thermal energy reservoir which always supplies heat without undergoing any change of the temperature is called source. So source, for example, for source you can take it as sun, so large furnaces which are having abundant amount of heat energy. So that is why whatever the amount of heat you can take it from those source, its temperature will remain constant. Then sink. It is an energy reservoir which absorbs heat and it is always at lower temperature. Its temperature will never increase. Okay, so sink is an energy reservoir which absorbs heat and it is always at lower temperature. You can take it as sea and ocean. Whatever the heat or whatever the amount of heat that you can supply to the ocean or sea, its temperature will never increase because it is of huge quantity. That is why sea or ocean we can consider it as sink. Then let us talk about heat engine. A heat engine cycle is a thermodynamic cycle in which there is a net heat transfer to the system and a net work transfer from the system. I repeat, a heat engine cycle is a thermodynamic cycle in which there is a net heat transfer to the system and net work transfer from the system. The system which executes a heat engine cycle is called heat engine. So if you want me to simplify it, a heat engine is a device which takes heat and which does the work, which absorbs the heat or which takes the heat. Using that heat energy, it converts into mechanical energy. Heat engine is a device which converts heat into mechanical energy. So that is what the heat engine. A heat engine may be in the form of mass of a gas confined in a cylinder, which you can observe here, or a mass of water moving in a steady flow through a system or a power plant. You can observe here. Okay, so both are heat engines. In the cycle or in the cyclic engine as represented in the figure A. Okay, you can, from this diagram we can name these. So Q1 is heat added to the system. Okay, Q1 is the furnace, sorry, Q1 is the boiler where we will heat the water. So in order to heat the water or convert this water into steam, we need to add the heat energy. So that Q1 is heat added to the system. Then WE, so work done by the system. WE or WT, we can take. Then WC, work is done upon the system. This is the turbine, work is done by the system. Then WP or WC, so work is done upon the system. So using the pump or compressor, we will add the energy or work is done on the system. So work is done upon the system. So Q2 is heat rejected from the system. You can see here, heat is rejected from the system. Because here in condenser, so what happens here, whatever the steam which comes out of the turbine will be condensed into water using the condenser. So in condenser, heat rejection from the system takes place. Okay, here we will add the heat to the system and here remove the heat from the system. Here we will add the work to the system, here we will remove the work from the system. So that's what it is. Figure B, Q1. So earlier slide we have figure 1 and it is this figure B. It is the flow process and it is the constant process. Then Q1, heat added to water. WT, work done by the turbine. Q2, heat rejected from the water or steam. Then WP, work done on the system using this pump. Then the net heat transfer in a cycle to either of the heat engines. So two heat engines we considered here. Okay. So one heat engine in figure A, which we have seen in earlier slide. Okay, a gas confined in a cylinder, and second B, which is a mass which is moving, which is a power plant. Both are heat engines. For both the heat engines, heat transfer in a cycle to either of heat engines is net heat transfer is Q1 minus Q2. You can call it as equation 1. And the net work transfer in a cycle is net work transfer in a cycle is WT, work done by the system minus work added to the system. So net work transfer in the cycle is WE minus WC. You can call it as equation 2. So by the first law of thermodynamics, we know that the first law of thermodynamics says that summation of heat interaction is equal to summation of work interaction in a thermodynamic cycle. So that means that net work transfer is equal to net heat transfer. So Q1 minus Q2 is equal to WT minus WP. Call it as equation 3. Net heat transfer is equal to net work transfer in a complete thermodynamic cycle. This is what the first law of thermodynamics. So I have applied this first law of thermodynamics to the heat engine. Then the efficiency of heat engine or heat engine cycle is defined as follows. So efficiency of heat engine is net work output of the cycle and total heat input to the cycle. So from the equation 1, 2 and 3 we can write it as net work done by the cycle to the net heat added to the total heat added to the system. So net work is WT minus WC. Q1 is heat added to the system. Q1 minus Q2 divided by Q1, which is equal to 1 minus Q2 by Q1. This is the expression for efficiency of heat engine. Now let us look about the statement of second law of thermodynamics. We have two statements for second law of thermodynamics. One is Kelvin-Planck statement and another one which we will see in the next slide, which is Clausius statement. First, let us look about Kelvin-Planck statement of second law of thermodynamics. We know that the efficiency of heat engine is given by the following formula. Okay, the efficiency of a heat engine is given by this formula: net work transfer by heat added to the system, which is equal to 1 minus Q2 by Q1. We have this expression. This is efficiency formula for a heat engine. From the experience, it shows that when W net, which is net work transfer through the system, is less than heat added to the system, since heat Q1 transfer to a system cannot be completely converted to work in a cycle. We know that from the experiments. So work transfer, heat which we have added to the system, is always greater than the net work which is done by the system. We know that all the heat which we supply to the system cannot be completely converted into heat. So from the statement, we can easily understand that in this formula, always net work transfer is always greater than heat added to the system. Okay, heat added to the system is always greater than the net work done by the system. We should understand this. Since heat Q1 is transferred to a system cannot be completely converted into work in a cycle, therefore efficiency is less than unity. We can never have 100% efficient engine. It is always less than unity. A heat engine can never be 100% efficient. Therefore Q2 is always greater than 0. Okay, that is, there has always to be a heat rejection. Q2 can never be 0. We should understand this. If Q2 becomes 0, then there is no heat rejection. Then there is no heat rejection means 100% efficient engine. So that's why we can never have 100% efficient engine. That's why Q2 can never be 0. There will always be a heat rejection to surrounding. So to produce a net work in a thermodynamic cycle, a heat engine has to exchange heat with two reservoirs, the source and sink. The Kelvin-Planck statement of the second law states that it is impossible for a heat engine to produce net work in a complete cycle if it exchanges heat only with bodies at single fixed temperature. So the meaning of the statement is we can never have 100% efficient engine. There will always be a heat rejection. In order to convert heat into work, a body or system should always interact with two bodies. One body should be source and another body should be sinks. It can never exchanges heat with only single fixed temperatures. Okay, so overall meaning of the second law of thermodynamics, we can never have 100% efficient engine. There will always be a heat rejection in an engine. That's why efficiency is always less than unity. We can see here, if Q2 becomes 0, that is net work transfer from the system is Q1, which is equal to Q1, or efficiency is 100%. The heat engine will produce net work in complete cycle by exchanging heat with only one reservoir, thus violating the Kelvin-Planck statement. Such heat engine we call it as perpetual motion of the second kind, so abbreviated as PMM2. A PMM2 is impossible. Okay, impossible machine is 100% efficient engine. In 100% efficient engine, a body or a heat engine will produce net work in a complete cycle, exchanging heat with one reservoir. Okay, so by exchanging heat with only one reservoir, a heat engine cannot work. Such heat engine is impossible. So which heat engine? A 100% efficient heat engine is not possible. So in order to work for a heat engine, it has to operate with two bodies, two different temperature bodies, source and sink. It cannot operate with a single source of temperature. So that's why, so such body, such impossible body which produces 100% efficiency is not possible. Such impossible body, such an imaginary body, we will call it as PMM2, perpetual motion of the second kind. Observe here, okay, PMM2 of second kind. So here what is happening here? We are adding heat to the heat engine and it is producing net work. That net work is equal to the heat added to the system, which is not at all possible. Here we can also observing the system or heat engine is operating with only single temperature. So this is not possible. All the heat energy we are supplying is converting into heat here, converting into work here. So Q2 heat rejection is 0. So this can never be possible. So that impossible machine we will call it as PMM2, perpetual motion machine of second kind. You can see here. So for a heat engine, for a proper heat engine, we are adding heat here. For a perfect heat engine to operate in a proper manner, it should operate between two bodies, source and sink. Both are at different temperature, and it is rejecting some amount of heat to the sink and producing net work. This is possible. So such possible engine we will call it as heat engine. And this impossible machine which is rejecting zero heat energy and producing net work, which means that all the heat energy we are supplying is converting it to work, which is not possible. So all the heat energy we are supplying, some out of this heat energy we added is some part is converting into work and some part is rejecting to the sink. So this is possible. Earlier I told that we have two statements for second law of thermodynamics. One is Kelvin-Planck statement, which we have seen already, and now we will see Clausius statement of the second law of thermodynamics. And this Clausius statement says that it is impossible to construct a device. It is impossible to construct a device which operating in a cycle will produce no effect other than the transfer of heat from a cooler to a hotter body. Okay, I repeat this statement. It is impossible to construct a device which operating in a cycle will produce no effect other than the transfer of heat from a cooler body to hotter body. We know that from the common sense, it is heat always travel from hotter region to cooler region. So that is the natural thing we can observe in the nature. But reverse of this is not possible. That is what the Clausius statement of second law says. We know that in normal condition or from the nature of law or law of nature, we can easily say that heat travel from hotter reservoir to cold reservoir. It is a natural. but reverse of this is not possible without some amount of work is added to the system. Okay, so this reversal of this, which means that transfer of heat from this cold reservoir to hot reservoir is not possible unless you add some amount of work, unless you put effort on it. So naturally it is not possible to construct a heat engine, or it is impossible to construct a device which transfers heat from cold to hot body without some amount of work is spent on it. So that is what the class S statement of second law says. Now let us understand about heat pump and refrigerator. So let us consider refrigerator. A refrigerator is a device which operating in a cycle maintains a body at a temperature lower than the temperature of the surrounding. Okay. A function of refrigerator is to keep a body under consideration at a temperature lower than the atmospheric temperature or ambient temperature. That is what the function of refrigerator. By its function itself, we can define the refrigerator. Let the body A be maintained at temperature T2, which is lower than the ambient temperature T1. Okay, you can observe in the diagram, this is the body A which we need to maintain at temperature T2, and T1 is the ambient temperature. Okay, now let us talk about its working, understand about its working. The vapor is first compressed in the compressor C1 driven by a motor which absorbs the work WC in the process 1 to 2. Okay, this is the compressor. Here the compression of refrigerant takes place. Okay, in order to compress the refrigerant we need to supply energy. So this compressor is coupled or attached to a motor. So in order to run the motor we need to supply the work, or we need to supply the energy in the process 1 to 2, and then the condensed refrigerant is sent to condenser and rejecting the latent heat of condensation Q1 at temperature higher than that of the atmosphere at T1 for heat transfer takes place, which is 2 to 3. Okay, whatever the compressed refrigerant will be sent to condenser, here heat rejection takes place. Okay, whatever the compressed refrigerant will be condensed here, and heat rejection takes place in the process 2 to 3, and then the condensate then expands adiabatically through an expander. Whatever the condensate will be sent to the expander, here expansion of the condensate takes place. The condensate then expands adiabatically through an expander, producing work WE. Okay, here it produces work WE. Work is done by the system here. Here work is added to the system. Work is done by the system. Here work is rejected by the system. In the process 3 to 4, what happens? Work is done by the system. Then in the process whatever 3 to 4, okay, it is expansion. In the process 4 to 1, refrigerant evaporate by absorbing the heat. Okay, here refrigerant evaporates here by absorbing the heat Q2. By absorbing the heat Q2, refrigerant evaporates here. Such cyclic device of flow through E1, C1, C2, E2. Okay, where it is E1, C1, C2, E2. Okay, this is E1, this is C1, E1, C1, E2, and C2. So this is what the cyclic device. This cyclic device we can call it as refrigerator. Okay, in a refrigerator cycle, attention is focused, or it is concentrated on a body A. Because why we concentrating on body A is, that is what the temperature of body A to be maintained at the temperature lower than the atmosphere. That is what, or that is why the attention is concentrated on a body A. Q2 and W are primary interest here. Okay, I repeat, Q2 and W are primary interest here. Just like efficiency in a heat engine, there is a performance parameter in a refrigerator called coefficient of performance. So instead of defining efficiency of refrigerator, will define another performance parameter to analyze the performance of refrigerator. So we introduced a term called coefficient of performance. In short, we will call it as COP. Okay, the COP is defined as desired effect by work input. What is the desired effect in refrigerator is Q2, because that is the amount of heat we are removing from the body A in order to maintain the body A under the atmospheric pressure. So that is why desired effect is Q2 and work input is W. So coefficient of performance of refrigerator is Q2 by Q1 minus Q2. This is a very important parameter in order to analyze the performance of a refrigerator. So in order to analyze the performance of a refrigerator, we will use a special term called coefficient of performance, which is COP in short, which can be defined as desired effect by work input. Desired effect is Q2, the work input is net work input is Q1 minus Q2. So this is an expression to analyze the performance of refrigerator. Now let us discuss about heat pump. A heat pump is a device which operating in a cycle maintains a body, say B, at a temperature higher than the temperature of the surrounding. Here heat pump is to maintain the temperature of a body higher than the surrounding. In a refrigerator, we used to maintain the temperature of a body, temperature of a considered body, at a temperature lower than the atmospheric temperature. Here we need to maintain the temperature of a considered body higher than the temperature of the surrounding. So that is what the heat pump. We need to add the heat here. In order to maintain the temperature, we need to add the heat here, or we need to pump the heat here. That is why heat pump it is. In refrigerator, it removes the heat. Okay. So reverse of refrigerator is heat pump. Then the working fluid operates in a cycle flowing through the evaporator E1. In the block diagram we can see here evaporator E1, then compressor C1, condenser C2 and expander E2. Similar to the refrigerator, but the attention here is focused on the high temperature body B here. Attention here is focused on the high temperature body B here. In refrigerator, attention was on body A. In heat pump, attention is on body B. Okay. Here Q1 and W are primary interest and COP is defined as. In refrigerator, this Q2 and W are primary interest. Net work is. Here in the heat pump, this Q1 and net work is primary interest. So from the term COP, which is coefficient of performance of heat pump, is desired effect by net work input. Desired effect here is Q1 and net work is Q1 minus Q2. Then from the equation 1 and 2 it is easily found that we can easily derive that coefficient of performance of heat pump is equal to coefficient of performance of refrigerator plus 1. Okay. Now let's have a discussion on equivalence of Kelvin Planck and Clausius statement. We know that, and we have already discussed two statements for second law of thermodynamics, which is Kelvin Planck statement and Clausius statement. Both talk about second law of thermodynamics only. Then at first sight, Kelvin Planck and Clausius statement may appear to be unconnected, but it can easily be shown that they are virtually two parallel statements of the second law and are equivalent in all aspects. Here we need to prove that both statements are talking about second law of thermodynamics itself. The meaning of both the laws or meaning of both the statements are same, but at first sight it looks like both are unconnected, but that is not true. The equivalence of the two statements will be proved if it can be shown that the violation of one statement implies the violation of the second and vice versa. I repeat, the equivalence of the two statements will be proved if it can be shown that the violation of one statement implies the violation of the second and vice versa. So that is what we are going to prove. So what we are going to prove here is
we're going to prove that both Kelvin Planck and Clausius statements are same statements, which means both are two parallel statements of the second law. They are interconnected. That's what we need to prove. So in order to prove that, let us first consider a cyclic heat pump P, which we can observe in the diagram, which transfers heat from a low temperature reservoir T2 to a high temperature reservoir T1, which you can observe in the diagram, with no other effect, that is, with no expenditure of work, violating Clausius statement in the figure A. Okay. Let us assume a cyclic heat engine E operating between the same thermal energy reservoirs, producing net work in one cycle. The rate of working of heat engine is such that it draws an amount of heat Q1 from the hot reservoir equal to that discharged by the heat pump is fed to the heat engine. So we see that the heat pump P in the diagram and the heat engine E are acting together, constitute a heat engine operating in a cycle and producing net work while exchanging heat only with one body at a single fixed temperature. So this violates the Kelvin Planck statement. So which means that, or we have proved that, so violation of Clausius statement leads to violation of Kelvin Planck statement. Okay, violation, if you violate the Clausius statement, which means that, or which directly says that you are violating the Kelvin Planck statement. In the diagram you can observe here. Then let us now consider a perpetual motion machine of the second kind E, which produces net work in a cycle by exchanging heat with only one thermal reservoir. You can observe here, we are considering heat engine which is exchanging heat with only one thermal reservoir and producing work W1. Q2 is 0. Let us assume. So this violates the Kelvin Planck statement. That is what the Kelvin Planck statement says. It is impossible to construct a device which is operating with single source temperature, okay, by producing net work. It is impossible according to Planck statement. So we are violating Planck statement here. Now let us assume a cyclic heat pump P extracting heat Q2 from a low temperature reservoir at T2 and discharging heat to T1 high temperature reservoir with the expenditure of work W, which is equal to the work which is done by the heat engine, which is PMM2, delivers a complete cycle. This completes one cycle. So E and P both together constitute a heat pump working in a cycle and producing the sole effect of transferring heat from lower to higher temperature body. Okay, so both this E and P together constitute a heat pump working in a cycle producing the sole effect of transferring heat from lower temperature to high temperature body. So which is also not possible. So that means that violating the Clausius statement. So in previous slide we have seen that violating the Clausius statement violated the Kelvin Planck statement. Here and we are also proving that violating the Kelvin Planck statement we are violating the Clausius statement also. So both these two scenario or both the cases, in both the cases we have seen that, and violation of one law leads to violation of another law. So this clearly says that both the statements are parallel statements of second law of thermodynamics. They are interconnected. Reversibility and irreversibility. The second law of thermodynamics enables us to divide all processes or all the thermodynamic processes into two types or into two categories. Those are reversible process and irreversible process. Then cause of irreversibility. Why a process will be reversible? The irreversibility of any process or any thermodynamic process may be due to either one or both of the following reasons. So let us have those reasons. One is lack of equilibrium during the process, then involvement of dissipative effect. Let us understand what is lack of equilibrium and what is involvement of dissipative effect. First, consider lack of equilibrium during the process. The lack of equilibrium, that equilibrium may be mechanical, thermal, or chemical between the system and its surrounding, or between two system or two parts of the same system, causes a spontaneous change which is irreversible. That spontaneous change causes irreversibility. The lack of this equilibrium causes a process to become or to tend towards irreversibility. Then involvement of dissipative effect. It is maybe due to the friction, viscosity, inelasticity, electrical resistance and magnetic hysteresis. So these effects are known as dissipative effect and work is said to be dissipated. So that is why, because of these two reasons, a process or any thermodynamic process will be irreversible. Carnot cycle. A reversible cycle is an ideal hypothetical cycle in which all the processes constituting the cycle are reversible. We need to understand one thing here is Carnot cycle is an imaginary cycle which constitute all the reversible processes. So all the reversible processes constitute a reversible cycle. But in reality, most of the processes are irreversible. It is very difficult to have a reversible processes and hence a reversible cycle. But all these processes are reversible or imaginary processes. Carnot cycle is a reversible cycle for a stationary system as in a piston and cylinder machine. The cycle consists of the following four successive processes. So this is a Carnot cycle here. Okay, we're adding heat to a system, and here adding heat to a system, and steam is expanding here. Again, expanded steam is sent to condenser. Here heat rejection takes place, and heat work is added to here. In order to run the pump, we need to add the work. So heat addition, work done by the system, heat removed from the system, and work added to the system.
Carnot cycle consists of following four processes. Let us have one by one. A reversible isothermal process 1 to 2. It is a process in which it is a process. So this is the isothermal process 1 to 2. It is a process in which heat Q1 enters the system at temperature T1. At constant temperature T1, the internal energy of the system increases here 1 to 2. From the first law of thermodynamics, if you apply first law of thermodynamics to the process 1 to 2, then it becomes Q1 equal to U2 minus C1 plus W1 to 2. For an ideal gas, U1 is equal to U2. Then second one, a reversible adiabatic process 2 to 3. It is a process in which work WE is done by the system adiabatically and reversibly at the expense of internal energy, and the temperature of the system decreases from T1 to T2. From first law of thermodynamics, then for this process 2 to 3, if you apply first law of thermodynamics, there is no heat transfer because it is adiabatic expansion. Then U3 minus U2 plus W2 to 3. Then process 3 to 4, reversible isothermal process. It is a process in which QC leaves the system at constant temperature T2. Internal energy of the system further decreases. Then if you apply first law of thermodynamics to process 3 to 4, you will get this. Then process 4 to 1, a reversible adiabatic process. It is a process in which work WP is done upon the system adiabatically, and the internal energy of the system increases and the temperature rises from T2 to T1. And if you apply first law of thermodynamics to the process 4 to 1, you will get this equation. And this Carnot cycle consists of 2 reversible isotherms and 2 reversible adiabatics.
constituting a Carnot cycle, which is represented in PV coordinates, which you can refer in earlier slide. Then by applying first law of thermodynamics to the Carnot cycle, you will get net heat transfer is equal to net work transfer. So Q1 minus Q2 is equal to, so this is the net work transfer. So Q1 minus Q2 equal to WT minus WP. Okay, let us have a look at Carnot's theorem. Carnot's theorem states that of all heat engines operating between a given constant temperature source and a given constant temperature sink, none has a higher efficiency than a reversible engine. Which means that if we simplify the theorem, what we can understand here is no engines in this universe which is having higher efficiency than Carnot engine or a reversible engine. Let us prove this. What we are going to prove here is, we will prove that Carnot efficiency is higher than Carnot engine efficiency is higher than other engines. It is a standard. So let us prove this. Let two heat engines EA and EB operate. Two engines EA and EB operate between the given source at a temperature T1 and sink at temperature T2, as shown in the figure. Let EA be any heat engine and EB be any reversible heat engine. Okay, EA is any heat engine, any other heat engine, and it is reversible heat engine EB. We have to prove that the efficiency of EB is, which is reversible, is always more than the efficiency of a other heat engine, which is irreversible engine. Let us assume that this is not true. What is not true? Let us assume that this is not true, and let us assume that efficiency of engine A is more than efficiency of engine B, which means that efficiency of irreversible engine is more than efficiency of reversible engine EB. So let the rate of working of the engines be such that Q1A, which is equal to Q1B, which is equal to Q1. Okay, Q1A, Q1B equal to Q1. Since efficiency of A is more than efficiency B, I mean what we have assumed here. According to this assumption, if you use that assumption here, efficiency of engine A is more than efficiency of this reversible engine. So from this equation we can write this. So net work done by engine and heat added to the engine, and this is more than this. Okay, if just I am simplifying this efficiency term, then work done by engine A, which is irreversible engine, is more than the efficiency of this reversible engine. Now let EB be reversed. This engine, reversible engine, is reversed. Since EB is reversible heat engine, the magnitudes of heat and work transfer quantities will remain the same, but the directions will be reversed. Okay, just I am reversing it. EB is reversed as shown in the figure B. I mean in this figure we have reversed this engine. Since work done by engine A is more than work done by engine B, some part of WA, some part of WA which is equal to WB may be fed to drive this reversed heat engine. Since Q1A is equal to Q1B equal to Q1, the heat discharged by irreversible, so this may be supplied to this. The source may therefore be eliminated, which is shown in the figure sheet. This we can eliminate because both are same, Q1A equal to Q1B equal to Q1. The net result is this EA and irreversible. This EA and this irreversible together constitute a heat engine. Both these constitute a heat engine which operate in a cycle, produces net work WA minus this WB while exchanging heat with a single reservoir at T2. While exchanging heat with single reservoir at T2. This violates the Kelvin-Planck statement of the second law, because according to Kelvin-Planck statement, an engine has to operate between two different source temperatures, two different bodies at two different temperatures, then only it can produce work. But here, if this engine, both these engine constitute an heat engine, this heat engine is operating with only single source temperature. This is called impossible. So this is impossible. It clearly violates the Kelvin-Planck statement of the second law. Hence, whatever the assumption we had earlier to derive this, which was efficiency of a engine A is more than the efficiency of a reversible engine, is wrong. So that is why we can easily talk that, or we can easily conclude that efficiency of irreversible engine is always more than or equal to efficiency of any other engine, which means that efficiency of Carnot engine or efficiency of a reversible engine is always more than the efficiency of other practical engines. Corollary of Carnot's theorem. This corollary of Carnot theorem says that the efficiency of all reversible heat engines operating between the same temperature level is same. I repeat, the efficiency of all reversible heat engines operating between the same temperature level is same. Or in other words, the efficiency of a reversible engine is independent of the nature or amount of the working substance undergoing the cycle. It purely depends on the end temperatures. So by the corollary of Carnot theorem, so let us simplify the expression of efficiency of reversible heat engine. Then efficiency of the reversible heat engine becomes, this is efficiency of reversible heat engine is always maximum. So more than this we cannot achieve. So Q1 minus Q2 by Q1, which we have already derived. Okay. Then, so if you apply the Carnot's corollary theorem here, then if you express this in terms of temperature, so 1 minus T2 by T1, and reversible heat engine is efficiency of reversible heat engine can also be calculated by end temperatures T1 minus T2 by T1. Then the coefficient of performance of a refrigerator is given by. So if you apply this Carnot's corollary theorem to this expression, COP of refrigerator, it becomes 1 minus Q1 by Q2 minus 1. Then for reversible refrigerator, this is the efficiency, coefficient of performance expression for refrigerator. Then if the refrigerator is reversible, then the expression becomes, instead of Q1 by Q2, we can substitute by T1 by T2. Then COP of reversible refrigerator becomes T2 by T1 minus T2. And similarly, COP of reversible pump, T1 minus T1 minus T1 by T1 minus T2. So this is how corollary theorem of Carnot can be used in order to analyze the performance of reversible refrigerator, reversible pump, and reversible heat engine. Now let us solve some numericals on the concept of what we have discussed so far. Let us discuss first problem. A cyclic heat engine operates between a source temperature of 800 degrees Celsius and a sink temperature of 30 degrees Celsius. What is the least rate of heat rejection per kilowatt net output of the engine? We know that when we have a least rate of heat rejection is if the given engine is reversible, then only we can have least rate of heat rejection. Okay, then efficiency, when we get maximum efficiency, if the heat rejection is minimum, then only we will get maximum efficiency. Then maximum efficiency when we will get is when the engine is reversible. So reversible heat engine expression for efficiency is 1 minus T2 by T1, which we have already proved in earlier slide. So in this problem, T2 he has given, T1 he has given. Okay, this is a schematic of the given problem. Heat engine operating between source and sink, which produces the net work of 1 kilowatt. Need to find out what is the heat rejection. Okay, so end temperatures, using this expression we can calculate efficiency of this engine is 71%. Then now maximum efficiency is net work done by the system by heat added to the system. Then so using this expression we can calculate heat added to the system Q1 1.39. So net work done by the system is equal to net heat transfer. Then using this expression Q2 heat rejection is 39 kilowatt. Now next problem, a domestic food freezer maintains a temperature of minus 15 degrees Celsius. The ambient air temperature is 30 degrees Celsius. If heat leaks into the freezer at the continuous rate of 1.75 kilojoule per second, then what is the least power necessary to pump this heat out continuously? Okay, this is the given problem. Okay, we can refer the diagram here. So reversible heat engine means refrigerator it is, and this is the ambient temperature and it is the freezer. Then from the given data, freezer temperature T2 is 258 Kelvin, ambient temperature is 303 Kelvin, heat leakage into the freezer is 1.7 kilojoule per second, which is Q2, heat leakage into the freezer. For minimum power requirement, so if you use this corollary theorem of Carnot, which we have seen in earlier slide, then heat rejected to the ambient or heat rejected to the surrounding is 2.06 kilojoule per second. Net work done on the system is Q1 minus Q2, which is 0.31 kilojoule per second. Okay, this much work is needed in order to run this freezer, which is W. So that's what he could us to calculate what is the least power necessary to pump the heat out continuously. Then next problem, a Carnot engine absorbs 200 joule of heat from a reservoir at the temperature of the normal boiling point of water and rejects heat into a reservoir at the temperature of the triple point of water. Find the heat rejected, the work done by the engine and the thermal efficiency. Q1 is 200 joule at T1 373 1.5 Kelvin and T2 is 273 Kelvin. Using this Carnot corollary theorem, we can write it as Q2 by Q1 is equal to T2 by T1. Then Q2 is 146.4 joule. Then net work done by the engine is 53.61 joule. Then finally efficiency, net work done by heat added. Then it becomes efficiency of this engine is 26.8%.